Stop scrolling, because what you're about to hear is not a rumor, not a leak, and definitely not the kind of story anyone expected to explode this fast. Tonight, the internet is on fire. Courtrooms are shaking. Federal offices are scrambling. And one woman, Wendy Osefo, is standing in the center of a storm that was never meant to reach the public. Newly leaked court documents have revealed something so shocking, so dangerous, that social media is calling it the biggest federal fumble of the year. According to the files, Wendy didn't just sign a $40 million deal. She signed her way into a target. A target placed directly on her back by forces powerful enough to bury careers, destroy reputations, and twist the truth until it becomes unrecognizable. But that's not the real shock. The documents claim the $450,000 burglary that destroyed Wendy's life? The scandal that turned her into a national headline? The accusation that ripped her apart publicly? It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't even a coincidence. It was a setup, a calculated move, a perfectly timed trap. Designed just days after her multi-million-dollar deal, the same deal that threatened to expose corruption at the highest levels. And now, federal agents are being accused of mishandling evidence, ignoring red flags, and letting the real mastermind walk free. Screenshots are leaking. Timelines aren't matching. Fingerprint logs don't add up. And the internet wants answers. Because if these documents are real, Wendy Osefo isn't the criminal. She's the victim. A woman silenced. A woman targeted. A woman whose $40 million success may have cost her everything. And boss, this is only the beginning. The moment those court documents leaked, the entire internet shifted. Timelines froze. Comment sections turned into crime scenes. People weren't just reading allegations, they were watching a woman's entire life unravel in real time. And at the center of that collapse was Wendy Osefo, someone the public once viewed as polished, controlled, unshakably confident. But the files revealed a story she never wanted the world to see. A story that started with a deal worth $40 million and ended with a target drawn straight across her back. It all begins on a day that should have changed her life for the better. A day she walked into a private boardroom, signed a multi-million-dollar media development contract, and walked out believing she had just secured her future. She didn't know that future was already being dismantled behind the scenes. According to the leaked documents, the deal wasn't just big, it was dangerous. It was ambitious enough to threaten the wrong people, loud enough to rattle quiet power structures, and bold enough to expose the type of corruption that never survives daylight. Wendy's project was designed to break open political laundering, federal cover-ups, insurance-backed crime rings, and names so influential that entire institutions trembled at the idea of them being dragged into the public eye. The files say the contract was supposed to stay confidential until the network's announcement. Only 3 individuals had access: Wendy, her legal advisor, and the person investigators initially labeled as a trusted internal partner. Even in the redacted documents, the fear is clear. This wasn't the kind of deal you whispered about at dinner. It was the kind that got phones tapped. The kind that made people disappear. The kind that got leaked only when someone needed a distraction or a scapegoat. And then it happened. 11 days after the contract was signed, a frantic 911 call was placed from Wendy's home. Her voice sounded panicked, breathless, disoriented. She told police her bedroom had been ransacked. Designer handbags gone. Jewelry boxes emptied. Luxury items stripped. A total loss of over $450,000. Officers documented the scene. Headlines exploded. Fans were confused. Haters were gleeful. Commentators were ruthless. But none of that compared to what the court documents claim next. Investigators discovered that nothing about the burglary made sense. Expensive electronics left untouched. Children's rooms spotless. Footsteps inconsistent with forced entry. No signs of an outsider breaking in. And then came the detail that flipped the internet upside down. Wendy was seen wearing a diamond ring on social media just 3 days after she reported it stolen. A ring that was supposedly part of the $450,000 loss. A ring that ended up becoming the centerpiece of the case. Behind the scenes, federal agents were already looking into the discrepancies. But what shocked everyone wasn't the alleged evidence against Wendy, it was how investigators handled that evidence. Or rather, how they didn't. The leaked files show timeline errors, undocumented transfers, missing photographs, conflicting reports, and internal notes suggesting officers were under external pressure. Someone wanted this case closed fast. Someone wanted a narrative pushed. Someone needed Wendy labeled as the villain before she could speak. And then, buried deep in the paperwork, investigators found something insane. The missing folder containing Wendy's $40 million deal documents wasn't stolen at all. It was recovered inside her own bedroom during a federal search. If the burglars took it, why would it be inside her house? If she staged it, why would she hide evidence that could destroy her? Nothing matched. None of it added up. And that's when people started whispering that the burglary wasn't a real crime, it was a message. The court documents reveal that just 2 weeks before the break-in, Wendy's private emails linked to her project suddenly began disappearing. Metadata was altered. Messages were scrubbed. File access logs were wiped. And her legal advisor, one of the only people aware of the 40M contract's true contents, was involved in a mysterious car accident that investigators labeled unrelated, despite the timing raising eyebrows across social platforms. The leaked files describe an environment filled with pressure, panic, and political tension. They mention internal notes from federal officials warning that the project Wendy was building could destabilize several ongoing operations. They reference unnamed individuals asking whether the documentary series could be delayed, reshaped, or completely dissolved. And they show a shocking trail of warning signs that the burglary might have been a staged intelligence tactic, either to intimidate Wendy or eliminate her project entirely. But the most heartbreaking part of the leaked documents isn't the crime scene analysis or the federal mismanagement. It's the moment Wendy walked into the courtroom. Cameras weren't allowed, but every journalist in the room described the same image. A woman shaking as she clutched a file containing the deal she believed would change her life. Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. Her eyes filled as she listened to prosecutors dismantle everything she built. She wasn't angry. She wasn't combative. She was broken. Witnesses say her hands trembled so badly she couldn't hold her papers straight. She kept staring at them like they were the only proof she had left. Proof that she wasn't a thief. Proof that she wasn't the mastermind of a fraudulent stunt. Proof that at some point, she was supposed to be the hero of her own story. Instead, she had become the headline of a scandal she never saw coming. Social media erupted. People didn't know what to believe. Some accused her instantly. Others saw the inconsistencies and demanded answers. Many pointed out that the federal government has a long history of mishandling cases involving public figures, especially those who challenged the wrong people. The leaked files only amplified those fears. Mistakes in chain of custody. Missing security footage. Misfiled evidence. Officers contradicting each other. Judges questioning why the investigation moved so fast yet remained so sloppy. And then came the final blow, a note in the leaked documents claiming the federal agency failed to properly handle multiple key items related to the case, labeling the investigation a massive fumble. The phrase spread like wildfire. People began questioning everything. Why would an agency with unlimited resources make such amateur mistakes? Why wasn't Wendy given the chance to properly defend herself? Why were timeline gaps ignored? Why were her missing contract files treated as stolen when they were found inside her home? Why was her legal advisor's accident dismissed without deeper review? Every detail in those documents makes one thing painfully clear. Wendy may not have been targeted because she did something wrong. She may have been targeted because she did something threatening, something powerful, something worth $40 million. And now, the world is watching the collapse of a woman who might not be a criminal at all, but the victim of one of the most calculated takedowns the internet has ever seen. Wendy's scandal tore through the internet. People thought they had seen every twist. They were wrong. What came next was darker, deeper, and far more brutal than anything the public expected. The leaked files didn't just paint a picture of incompetence. They revealed a system collapsing under its own lies. And Wendy, standing in the middle of it, looked like a person being buried alive while the world watched. It all began when a second batch of documents circulated through online forums, private Reddit threads, encrypted Telegram channels, and whistleblower accounts. These weren't polished reports. They were raw, unfiltered, unedited fragments, the kind of files that were never supposed to leave government servers. And in those fragments, investigators found something that ripped the case open even further: communication logs between federal officials referencing pressure from external parties, timestamps showing alterations, and internal memos questioning why certain leads were intentionally deprioritized. The phrase intentionally deprioritized became the spark that set the entire internet on fire. Commentators started calling the case a staged political demolition. Journalists began digging for the missing context. YouTube channels launched full investigations within hours. And viewers watched the story unravel like a psychological thriller, each revelation darker than the last. The biggest shock came when one leaked memo showed a federal agent questioning why the alleged stolen items didn't match Wendy's insurance profile. According to the document, several high-end pieces that were supposedly missing had no purchase history attached to Wendy's name, no receipts, no bank records, nothing. Instead of treating this as a red flag against the accusation, the memo suggests superiors push the agent to focus on the narrative of asset disappearance rather than origin. Focus on the narrative. Those 4 words changed everything. Suddenly, online investigators started piecing together a theory. The burglary wasn't meant to expose Wendy's fraud. It was meant to destroy her credibility. A setup that didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to look convincing enough to make the public turn against her while the real motive stayed buried. And then the wildest detail surfaced. Wendy's security cameras weren't disabled by thieves. They were disconnected manually. The timestamp matched a window of time when someone in the house had unsupervised access. That revelation led viewers to a chilling realization: whoever orchestrated the event didn't break in from outside. They were already inside. Internet forums exploded with speculation. Some accused insiders. Some blamed professional operatives. Some believed the government was involved. But the court documents added another twist. The system logs from the night of the incident showed local network interference consistent with internal device manipulation. In normal language, that meant someone inside the home tampered with the cameras. While social media spiraled, Wendy remained silent. Not by choice, but because her legal team advised complete silence until they could understand the scope of what they were dealing with. But silence only fueled the narrative further. People mistook her absence for guilt, not knowing she was inside her house crying, shattered, and terrified of a battle she didn't understand. The courtroom scenes became the emotional backbone of the scandal. Every hearing felt like a televised tragedy without cameras. Lawyers pounded through contradictory reports. Judges questioned missing timestamps. Officers struggled to explain why key evidence bags had been mislabeled. And Wendy sat there, gripping the table so hard her knuckles turned white, as though holding something still was the only way she could keep herself from breaking. Witnesses later described moments so heartbreaking they spread across the internet like wildfire. One reporter wrote that Wendy looked like someone holding onto the last pieces of her life, while everyone else argued over how to take them from her. Another said her shoulders collapsed each time the prosecution mentioned the $40 million contract, as though hearing its name physically hurt her. The files painted the burglary as a crime. The leaked documents painted it as a plan. The public didn't know what to believe. But the more the truth dripped out, the more people began questioning the motives behind the federal investigation. The biggest turning point came when a whistleblower revealed an internal timeline. It showed investigations into Wendy began before the burglary was even reported. That detail left the internet gutted. If true, it meant Wendy wasn't investigated because of the crime. The crime may have been created because there was a need to investigate her. And if investigators were looking into her before the burglary, then the burglary wasn't evidence, it was justification. From that moment, the tone online shifted. People stopped treating the case like gossip and started treating it like a scandal. They questioned why Wendy's emails were wiped days after her deal. They questioned why her contract files were listed as stolen but found in her home. They questioned why federal agents moved so fast on the theft but ignored contradictory evidence. And they questioned why her documentary series, the one meant to expose corruption, disappeared from production schedules the moment her case became public. Then came the courtroom whisper that shook the entire scandal. For journalists sitting in the gallery claimed to have overheard a prosecutor mutter to his colleague, "We just need to hold her until the bigger story drops." That sentence spread across the internet like gasoline on fire. People speculated endlessly about what the bigger story might be. Some said it was political. Some said financial. Some said personal. But almost everyone agreed someone wanted Wendy out of the picture. The emotional collapse continued during a hearing when Wendy finally spoke. Her voice cracked with every word. She told the judge she didn't understand why this was happening. She said her only mistake was believing she could make something meaningful, something powerful, something that mattered. Her voice shook when she said the project wasn't about money, it was about truth. And when tears dropped onto the table, it felt like the entire courtroom held its breath. Viewers online called it one of the most tragic moments they'd ever heard described in real time. It wasn't just humiliation. It was a woman publicly mourning the life she'd built while watching it be torn apart piece by piece. But the darkest part of the scandal wasn't the tears or the allegations. It was the realization that every step of the case seemed engineered to break Wendy emotionally before the truth could ever surface. From the missing footage to the mislabeled evidence to the planted doubts to the media leaks to the relentless questioning of her character, everything pointed to one terrifying conclusion: she wasn't being investigated. She was being dismantled. By the time the third wave of leaked documents hit the internet, people thought the case couldn't possibly get more twisted. They were wrong. Everything that came next felt like a final blow, not just to Wendy's reputation, but to the entire system that claimed to seek truth. What unfolded in the days that followed turned the scandal into something far bigger, far more dangerous, and far more heartbreaking than anyone expected. It didn't feel like news anymore. It felt like watching someone drown while the people responsible stood on the shore pretending they didn't see her. The leaked evidence started with something simple: a security report filed by a junior analyst, timestamped days after the burglary. In the report, the analyst mentioned inconsistencies between the physical layout of the home and the pattern of forced entry, the police initially claimed. According to the file, the lock wasn't broken. The frame wasn't splintered. The windows weren't tampered with. There was no sign of pry marks, no tool residue, no disturbed soil beneath the windows. It looked less like a break-in and more like someone walked in with full access. But what turned this small detail into a massive discovery was the line at the bottom. Senior officers instructed that this detail be omitted from the primary documentation. That one sentence sent shockwaves across the internet. It confirmed what people had been whispering since the beginning. The narrative was being shaped, not discovered. Someone was controlling the story. More leaks followed. Audio logs, notes from internal meetings, emails with lines blacked out by heavy-handed redactions. All of them pointed toward a coordinated push to redirect attention away from deeper truths. The files included references to public optics, protocol bypass, and damage containment. The tone wasn't investigative. It was strategic. Every line felt like an admission that the goal wasn't justice, it was control. And while the public argued over theories, Wendy was falling apart in real time. Reporters sitting inside the courtroom described her like she was fading by the minute. Her posture slumped. Her face strained. Her eyes swollen from nights of crying. She barely spoke. She barely moved. She barely survived each hearing. Every allegation landed like a punch. Every misinterpreted detail felt like a knife. Every procedural twist drained another piece of her spirit until she looked less like a defendant and more like a casualty. In one hearing, the prosecutor presented screenshots of her text messages. They weren't incriminating. They weren't damning. They were simply used to paint her as someone who benefited from luxury. Something about the tone of the presentation made the courtroom tense. It was as though they were trying to turn her personality into evidence. As though her confidence was arrogance. As though her success was suspicious. As though her lifestyle was proof of her guilt. What made the moment worse was how Wendy reacted. She lowered her head, exhaled shakily, and wiped away tears that slipped out silently. She wasn't angry. She wasn't defensive. She was tired. Tired of fighting narratives she didn't create. Tired of being framed as a villain in a story she didn't write. Tired of being attacked for achievements she earned. And tired of realizing that the people accusing her weren't just presenting evidence, they were shaping the entire perception of who she was. Then came the bombshell that ripped the scandal open wider than anyone imagined. A whistleblower posted a new set of documents anonymously. These files included a breakdown of the timeline of federal involvement. According to the timeline, surveillance of Wendy's home network began days before she signed the 40M deal. Not after. Not during. Before. This revelation changed everything. If she was being monitored before the deal, the investigation wasn't triggered by her actions. It was triggered by her proximity to exposing something bigger. Social media erupted in chaos. Analysts pointed out that surveillance usually required a warrant, yet there was no evidence of one granted before the timeline began. Theories exploded across platforms. Some believed agencies were tipped off by individuals tied to Wendy's documentary project. Others believed powerful entities feared she would uncover something dangerous. Some said the evidence hinted at industrial sabotage. Others said political interference. But one thing was clear, the scandal wasn't about a burglary anymore. It was about silencing someone who had become a threat. The next hearing became the breaking point. According to multiple witnesses, Wendy collapsed outside the courtroom before proceedings even began. Paramedics were called. Cameras weren't allowed, but audio leaked of a bystander describing her as unable to breathe, shaking uncontrollably, and muttering that she didn't know how much more she could take. The internet exploded with sympathy and fury. People began demanding accountability. They wanted answers for why a woman with no criminal history, no pattern of fraud, no motive for staging a crime, was being pushed to psychological collapse. But the harshest twist came when another set of documents leaked hours later, this time detailing the mishandling of the investigation from inside the federal agency itself. The files described misfiled evidence bags, contradictory witness statements, altered timestamps, misplaced photographs, and internal disagreements over how rapidly the case was being pushed. A chilling note appeared in one file. This pace is abnormal. Recommend reevaluation. The recommendation was ignored. As more details surfaced, the narrative became impossible to ignore. The burglary happened because someone needed justification. The accusations escalated because someone needed a distraction. The investigation spiraled because someone needed urgency. And Wendy became the perfect target because her success made her visible and her contract made her dangerous. The final leaked file was the most devastating. It was brief, only a few lines, but the content shook the internet. Subject Osefo's 40M project proposal intersects with ongoing confidential operations. Her work presents significant exposure risk. Recommend containment. Containment. That one word ended the debate. People realized Wendy's life wasn't falling apart by accident. It was collapsing by design. The emotional weight of the scandal became overwhelming. Fans cried reading updates. Comment sections filled with heartbreak. Influencers posted videos calling the situation one of the most disturbing miscarriages of justice ever put online. Major platforms began covering the story not as gossip, but as a national controversy. And everywhere you looked, the same message echoed. Wendy wasn't just targeted. She was sacrificed. The last courtroom appearance in this video became the most unforgettable moment of the entire saga. When Wendy stood before the judge, her voice barely rose above a whisper. She said she never imagined her dream project would become her downfall. She said she trusted the wrong people. She said she believed the system would protect her. She said she never thought telling the truth would become a crime. As she spoke, silence filled the room. Journalists later said they had never heard a testimony so raw, so fragile, and so filled with the weight of a woman losing everything she ever worked for. When she finished, she looked down at her trembling hands, folded them, and broke into tears so quiet the room felt like it was holding its breath. In that moment, it didn't matter who believed what. It didn't matter which theories were true. It didn't matter who orchestrated the takedown. The only thing that mattered was the undeniable tragedy unfolding in front of the world. If you've made it to the end of this story, you already know this isn't just a scandal. This is a warning. A reminder of how fast a life can be ripped apart the moment power decides the truth is inconvenient. Wendy didn't walk into this nightmare because she committed a crime. She walked into it because she signed a $40 million deal that threatened the wrong people, and now she's being dragged through a system that seems more interested in breaking her than finding answers. The courtroom isn't just a battlefield for evidence anymore. It's become the stage where her reputation is being dismantled piece by piece, and every new leak shows just how deep the damage goes. So here's the part where you matter. Her story isn't being told by the institutions that failed her. It's being told by the people who refuse to let this disappear. If you believe something bigger is happening, if you believe these files raise more questions than they answer, if you believe Wendy deserves more than silence and speculation, then don't scroll past this. Speak up in the comments. Push the conversation. Share this video with someone who hasn't seen the truth yet. The more eyes on this, the harder it becomes for anyone to bury the truth again. This isn't the end. This is the moment everything cracks open. And if you want the next chapter, the part they're trying the hardest to hide, then hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay locked in. Because what's coming next isn't just shocking. It's the part they never wanted you to find.